Producing a movie is a lot like making a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that you make yourself. Hi, I'm Phil Holt. I'm writer and director of the movie Living Room Fragile. It's the story of John, who loses his job and tries to keep his life from shattering apart, only that we see later the cracks begin to show. For the next half hour, we're going to be talking to the people involved in making the movie to get a behind-the-scenes look. And at the end of the program, there'll be an email address, and if you'd like to, we'd love to hear from you. Our first guest is Kathy Kolstad. Kathy plays the part of Alice. Kathy, welcome.
Hi, Phil.
I'm curious, how did you become involved in this production?
Well, as you know, we've known each other for quite a while.
Yeah.
And last summer you came to me with the script and said, Kathy, please take a look at this and let me know what you think. I'd like you to be involved with it. So I did. And I thought it would be a nice project to be involved in the fall when I didn't have anything else theatrical going on.
In terms of the fact that you and I worked together, we worked together at a Shakespeare and Company,
Yes.
which is an outdoor acting group that specializes in Shakespeare's works. What is your background, kind of building on that idea and that experience, what is your theatrical background?
I have a degree in theater. I came by it kind of accidentally. My other major is in mathematics, and I started taking theater classes in college and kind of ended up with a theater major as well. I did apprentice with the Wisconsin Shakespeare Festival. That's no longer functioning, but that was really my first introduction to acting in Shakespeare and classical theater.
So a pretty good background in the classics. Have you done other classical authors, Ibsen, those kind of things?
I've done Moliere, but it's been mostly Shakespeare, Sheridan, some of those other classical theater.
The script is pretty intense. There's a lot of argument scenes and that kind of thing. Was it difficult to sort of get to that emotion for you? Was that a challenge?
The biggest challenge that I had with playing the part of Alice was, for one thing, remembering my lines. You'd think it would be easy. Shakespeare is kind of difficult to memorize, but the lines were pretty short, and they were intense, and it was kind of difficult to make sure that you kept on the right pattern and kept the action going the way you had wanted it to go. And you were very lenient with us and letting us ad-lib, and that was helpful.
What could you tell us about your character, Alice?
I think Alice is more of your typical housewife. She probably was a stay-at-home mom for a period of years and recently went back into the workforce as a receptionist in a dentist's office. So she's really relied on her husband, I believe, for maintaining their financial security.
Take 3. Action.
Alice, I gotta run.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye. Oh, John, did you think about what I asked about what Dr. Olson said?
What
do you think?
I'll think about it.
Okay.
I gotta run. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
In the course of this movie, that financial security is shattered. For her, that's like shattering her whole existence and almost changing the roles between John, her husband, and Alice, where Alice is now the major breadwinner, even though she's not really winning that much bread with her job.
Do you think that Alice, not that she chose the right direction when she made her decisions, but do you think that, was it challenging to sort of go from that sort of set domesticity that she had, the domestic life that she had, to this journey that she takes with her encounters with the doctor and then dealing with that sort of aftermath? Was that tough to play that arc?
It was for me.
Yeah.
And mostly because personally, I'm not sure that I really understand why anyone would go and make that path, take that path. It just seems that you would think about what you were doing before you actually made a decision to have an affair. Because there's just no way that it can end well.
Yeah.
There just isn't any way.
And she found that out, too.
And yes, and it doesn't end well.
Alice, do you need money?
Leave.
I can help.
Get out of here.
I
Get the
can.
hell out of here. Get the hell out.
Please let me help
Shut up.
you.
Shut up.
In terms of acting, you've done a lot of stage acting and things like that. Kind of shift gears a little bit here. What was the biggest change or the biggest difference between the stage acting that you've done and the acting for the camera that you were doing with this piece?
Well, one of the big differences is continuity. When we're rehearsing for a play and performing a play, there's a set plot line. You know, the scenes go in order.
Yeah.
When we were filming the movie, it really depended on who was available to do the shoots, which I imagine you found frustrating. So it was very interesting for the people that are watching this. We actually did all of the doctor and the dentist and Alice scenes first. So I went through that whole process of having the affair. I was done with it, and then I went back to, I didn't have the affair yet. And
we're back in the kitchen.
Yeah, we're back at the kitchen. Nothing's happened. So that continuity was difficult to come to terms with. But interesting. It's, you do a scene, and no matter where that scene happens in the movie, you do that, you're done, and you have to move on from there, and the next day or the next month, 2 months later, when we get back to it, you have to find those emotions and find where you are in life with respect to the character in the movie.
What would you suggest to people, kind of as words to the wise, for someone who's going to be acting in a film for the first time?
Take it all in, actually. It was a very, very interesting process. One big difference between acting on stage and acting for the camera is that it's very much a partnership with you, the person operating the camera, the person doing sound, the people lighting you. You're only an instrument as an actor. And you are a lot, the same is true on the stage as well, but this even more so, because you may be thinking that you're doing a fabulous job acting, and maybe you are, but if the camera doesn't catch it, or if they can't hear you, or if the lighting is just a little bit off, you got to do it again. And when you're on stage and you're doing a play, you get one shot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just go on. So just take it all in. Watch what happens, because it's just fascinating from a technical perspective. All of the things that have to go in to make the movie. Did
you think sometimes, I'm glad we have another take at this, or did you think, that's the best I can do, I'm not sure I can get to that level again? Were there, which one of those emotions kind of came up when you had to do a retake of a scene that you thought either went really well or really didn't go well?
I always liked doing it again.
Yeah.
The one scene that we didn't do a double take on towards the end, because you were happy with the emotions, and I don't know when you put the film together what you thought about it, but that last climax scene I would have liked to have done again.
Really?
Yeah.
My thinking was that was so nicely done. It was like there was such raw emotion there. It was like, I don't think I could get her to go to that level again. It's interesting to think.
You might not have been, but you know what that raw emotion was?
What?
What is my line? I just, and that's, there's this hand gesture. It's just like, Jerry, shut up, because I have to think a moment about what my next line is.
And it played like you were thinking, what am I going to tell him?
Yeah.
I've got to come up with some kind of lie here. So when I saw that happening, I thought, okay, we've left the script a while back. I thought this raw emotion that's happening here, that we're never going to get to that again. So it was a decision. It was like, okay, I think she'll probably want another crack at it, but there's the emotional level that you were operating at was so high and so intense. I thought, I'm not going to ask her to do that again. But I want to thank you for number one, agreeing to be in this little film, kind of leaving the Shakespeare world and venturing into the modern drama. And also, thanks for your taking the time here to talk to us.
Well, thank you, Phil. I really enjoyed doing the movie, and the whole experience was fabulous. And thank you for the opportunity to try some contemporary acting. I realize I need to do more of that.
My next guest is Tim Payton. He played the part of Mr. Houston, who sent John on his little journey, I guess you could say. Tim, welcome.
Hi, Phil.
So as I recall, you were given one scene,
Yes.
rather than the whole script.
Yes, I had the one scene I was in. I'm only in like the third scene of the movie technically, and then I'm gone. So.
But it's a pivotal role.
Yes, it kicks the whole show off. It's kind of I felt the pressure. The pressure was there.
I'm curious, what kind of background do you have in terms of your acting?
Well, I have no real training whatsoever. I never took any classes or anything. I started doing stand-up comedy in high school. Impersonations, John Briner kind of thing was kind of my era thing. He was the guy who I kind of liked to emulate.
Yeah.
And then I did the Milton Berle thing and stole all the best jokes I could from everybody else, and I went on stage and did them. So I did a little stand-up while I was in the military active duty, and then I didn't do anything while I was raising a family. And then about 10 years ago, I started doing musical comedies, stage, Guys and Dolls with Lakeshore, and then just with our church. And then I auditioned and did some. I've been with Shakespeare and Company. That's how we met for about 7 years, and that's where I am now. I'm still doing the musical comedies. I do children's summer theater, directing now, and that kind of thing.
What's been the biggest shift from working on stage in all those different capacities, stand-up and Shakespeare and theater and that kind of thing, to working in this more of a media environment, shooting this film?
Well, I realized one thing is you have to work as hard to do a film as you do with theater, because you have to know your lines when you get there. You can't kind of I'm going to read the script and then lift up. You've got to be very aware of what's going to go on, so you can be there. There was a thing I read once. I have done some reading on theater, and can't remember, David Mamet, I think, said you have to live as if you're really that person. So it was very easy to apply that, because David Mamet's kind of like he's a modernist. A lot of
contemporary writer who's writes.
So yeah, and since
drama.
this moment was what you wrote, the show was in the moment, and it's a real live thing, that as if I was Mr. Houston, that's just what I had to do. So I read the part and just looked at it as if I was that character, and applied that. So the real difference is just it was kind of easy, to make that transition for me anyways.
What kind of, if you were to describe Mr. Houston to somebody, introduce him to somebody, what kind of person would you say he was? How would you describe him?
Well, the way I portrayed him and the way I thought you wrote him is he is a supervisor. He's got to fire a guy. He's not enjoying what he's doing. He's very uncomfortable with it. So he's trying to be as nice as you can when you fire somebody. He uses all the little euphemisms for firing rather than saying you're fired.
Scene 3, take 3.
The company needs to right size. I'm sure you understand. John, you've been separated. What? John, you've been let go. I'm sorry.
What surprised you most when we got into shooting, got into filming? What was the biggest surprise to you? In terms of either the process or what it was like for you to portray the part?
Well, I'm kind of, when I get in the creative part, and that's the thing about it, is when you're shooting, the creative part is right then. It's not like theater. You create the role, and then you get it all set, and then you recreate it every week. You create it, and then the second the camera stops rolling, you're done. So I felt like I was forced to be creative on the moment. There's one scene where you asked me to play with the pen, and you're going to do a close-up of the pen. And I really felt, because I hadn't thought about that at all, that I overplayed with the pen. It was really silly, because I'm really anal about that kind of thing. It's like I overplayed with the pen, and it made the total shoot of me playing with the pen unusable. And I was going like, oh, that's just going to be so bad. And so that's just how I thought about it in the moment. So
But it actually really worked well because we could use it at the end. It's like he's done this thing he didn't want to do, and then sort of the residual nervousness of that pen going like crazy. It was like it really matched well what you were doing. I thought.
Well, thanks.
Sure. What did you learn from doing this, as opposed to you've done a lot of stage work, and what kind of was the thing that you took away?
Well, I knew kind of going into it that it's a lot more subtle in theater, you know, and everything is amplified. Like in theater, you're playing not only to the people in the front row, you're playing to the people in the back row. So your gestures have to all be big and grand. But at the same time, you can't not do gestures. It has to be subtle. So it's not like, you know, when you're theater wink is like but, you know what I mean? But it might be just like that for a camera because that's all you need because the camera's right there. I mean, it's only inches away from you versus, you know, theater. You got a guy in the back row that's got to see that wink as well as the person in the front row. Especially with comedy, you're really broad, and we were doing drama, of course, so it's got to be more gentle. And so that's kind of a little bit of what I took away from it.
What was the biggest, in terms of working with all the cameras and things like, was there anything that really sort of made you nervous? I'm not sure how this is going to go, or was it pretty easy to adapt to it?
Well, it's like the eye contact thing. It's in theater, you want to maintain eye contact, and they teach you not to look at the audience, and the camera is your audience. I mean, really, it is because that's where everybody's looking through. They're actually looking through the camera. They're not looking, you know, directly at you. So that's the audience. So to not look into the camera is probably the hardest thing because I'm kind of what I consider one of my strengths in theater is to go out and actually walk into the audience and look at somebody in the audience and talk directly to them. To me, that's kind of a fun thing because it really makes you feel like you're connecting with them. And it's not something you want to do with a camera is look into the camera because it's really awkward.
As you've just seen.
Yes, it just doesn't look good. So it's really hard not to do that. So.
Well, they'll rewind that at home, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah.
What would you advise to somebody who hasn't done a film before, hasn't acted in a film before, but it's kind of facing that opportunity? What kind of advice would you give them going in?
Just like preparing. You have to, like I said, you've got to prepare as much. You've got to practice the line different ways. You know, that's the main thing. It's the same kind of, it's acting. It's just at a different level. You know, I'm used to, like, we just got done with, I sang in choir when we were singing, and when you're back and you're fighting with the organ at the back of the church, you've got to sing loud.
Yeah.
Well, in a quiet room, like in a controlled atmosphere, loud's not the point. It's about the emotion you're going to portray with your voice, the tension you have to have in the moment. And it's little subtle things. It's very, acting in front of a camera's a little bit more anal.
Very detailed.
Because it's very detailed.
Very
you know,
specific,
it's like there was one shot of the back of my head in the movie that I'm not very proud of because it's got the fat rings going back there. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're all looking at ourselves and thinking, wait a minute, why did I should have worn a hat.
Yes. For me, I got a big cape down the back. Well, those French Foreign Legion caps can cover everything. So it was, you know.
Well, cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for being in the movie.
Well, thanks, Phil.
Appreciate it.
It was a great experience.
My next guest is Jerry Marzullo, who played the part of John. Jerry, welcome.
So,
I'm curious, I'm sort of doing a survey here, I guess. What was your acting background before you got involved with this production?
well, I did a lot of theater. I've got a degree in theater, and I did a lot of primarily stage work in Chicago. And took about a 25-year hiatus and started getting back into the Twin Cities around 2000, I think. Yeah, about 2000. And been doing stage work for a number of different theaters around the cities, and then met you, and this was the first time I've done a film. So
Cool. What, in terms of roles that you've had on the stage, is it modern mostly, or do you stress maybe the classics more? Is it a
I've
range?
probably done more Shakespeare than anything, but I've done. I played Stanley in Streetcar. I've done Commedia dell'arte. I do a lot of dialect stuff. I played lately in my dotage I've taken to playing blustery fathers of Spanish, Lithuanian, descent. So I like doing dialect stuff to a certain point. But I don't know. I probably, if I had a preference, it would be Shakespeare or the classics. But I've gone where I've done a number of those, and you just want to do a contemporary drama, something that's not a farce or a comedy, and it's a different energy. And my own style, if I have a style, is more nuanced than external, and that's the way I used to work when I was younger.
What was the biggest change having all that stage experience that you have and all those different sort of realms, modern and Shakespearean? What was the biggest change from moving from a stage performance to shooting the film?
Well, it was, as I was just saying, the type of acting style, if I have an acting style, that I prefer is more nuanced. And sometimes it plays, and particularly in smaller theaters, where a quieter moment or an energy or something that's internal without being very histrionic or boisterous. And while it was a change to even pull that back more, I actually enjoyed that a lot. Because the slight internal shifts, or when if you watch a character and you believe the character, and it's not an actor acting, but you believe the character, you see them thinking, you see them feeling, and there's an honesty or an authenticity to it. And I think that, for me, that always plays better, quieter, and more, not introspective, but you don't have to put it way out there. And sometimes you have to with stage work, because it's a big theater, or if it's outside, or the acoustics are bad, you kind of have to balance that internal change or that internal energy, and have someone in the back row pick up on that without thinking you're trying to blow them away.
There was so much that you were doing with the part of John, that it was all in the eyes, and there was the fear when he loses the job. There was that sense of betrayal at the end when you find out about Alice's affair. There was so much going on there. I really thought if that was something you're working on, that really, and focusing on it, really showed, because it really came through. There's kind of John's soul, in his eyes.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know that it's something I ever. That's what I try to do. I mean, that's the way I approach any role, is to bring it out inside, and it's going to show, and it just translates, whether good, bad, or different. I think it translates, and it's hard to fake that on camera, or when it's real that close and intimate.
If you were to kind of shift gears a little bit here, if you were to introduce John or describe John, how would you describe your character?
I think his biggest motivating emotion is fear, and it's hard to operate. It's hard to make decisions out of fear. So, in reality, you can't do that very long. So it has to take different forms. It has to take over-optimism, or overcompensating, or thinking that the world is against you, and a lot of different things. But I think at the bottom line of it, it's fear. It's fear of everything that defined his life is just gone. And I think at some point he realizes that how tenuous that was, that's what defined his life. I mean, his marriage falls apart because of a lost job, and there should be more going on. There should be more, and I think at some part, there was a point at which I realized that he was afraid of his own emptiness without having a routine or a job to kind of define him, and which forced him to either look at how he related to his wife, how he related to his son, which again was kind of an overcompensating, because there wasn't a real father-son connection, except in the scene of the garage, I thought that was a point where at least I tried to connect more with Tom and try to bring him into it. But at this point, John didn't have enough tools to make that last. He didn't have enough emotional tools.
Why does everyone want to talk about it? Yeah. Talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll talk about it.
In terms of working with the other actors, and you've worked with a lot of these folks before at Shakespeare & Company and other groups, was it a different way of relating to the other actor? Did that come about, or were you able to build on the sort of relationships you had built on stage?
Well, the primary relationship obviously was with John and his wife, and Kathy and I think she's marvelous. And last summer we did Claudius and Gertrude, husband and wife, and they kind of have in Hamlet, and she's a delight to work with. And it really was just an extension of that, because I felt a connection working with her then that was easily translatable to this medium.
Sure. That was one of the reasons I got really excited about asking you to do it, because I saw what you were doing. You and I were in Hamlet together with Kathy, and I saw what you were doing, what was happening with that relationship. I thought, I've got to try to get this on camera.
Yeah, it was fun. She's very honest. I think she's quite good. And same with Jay. And I relate to Jay differently. I mean, I've done a lot of shows now with Jay and been directed by Jay, and he's kind of the quintessential buddy.
Yeah.
So
that comes. He plays the part of Bill in the bar scenes. That really comes out. Because the two of you at that first scene where you're really dejected, is like, what are we going to do now? And then that idea that he's trying to throw you the lifeline. That connection was really evident with you guys. Was it kind of odd? We had you in a situation where you were playing in a bar with those scenes, and we had you in front of a green screen. Was it odd to sort of be in a different place other than a bar, to kind of imagine that you were in that bar?
No. It's no different from moving from a rehearsal space on stage where you've got chairs that represent castles or tables or just tape on the floor, and all of a sudden doing it with a set. So no, there was no problem with that at all.
It shows how adaptable the stage work makes you. So you're able to move the principles and the ideas from one medium to the other.
If a method actor will just say, okay, it's hot outside, or I'm in a bar, or this, and then you just put yourself in whatever the situation is. So, it was fun to see, but it didn't make it difficult. I mean, it's at that point we're sitting there, and it's very easy to just sit at a bar. Yeah. And the rest is it just enhances it. It enhances the viewing, but again, no different from rehearsing for 3-4 weeks with no set at all, or very little set, and then just all of a sudden having real set pieces to do it.
One of the key differences I've seen is between acting on stage and in front of a camera is you got a chance to see yourself at the end. What was that like the first time you saw yourself on the screen? What kind of went through your head when you saw that?
How thin my hair looked.
I had that too. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. A lot of it first was just the physical things, but then I don't know. There were parts I liked. I was actually surprised that I was able to be a little more objective and said, I'm okay with that. And some things I thought, I might have done that differently, or I seem to be moving my eyes too much. And I really was kind of watching the whole scene. Mm-hmm. So it was the initial close-up and seeing all the physical imperfections. And once I got over that, then I just was watching it as a story, and whether I was believing the story or not.
Cool. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for not only agreeing to be in the film, kind of leaping from Shakespeare and the stage to the independent film world, and to thanking you for joining us today.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks.